Welcome to World Peace Week 2023 and to our panel, Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places. And the antidote to fear and conflict is safety. You may wonder why I've kind of thought to bring together a panel on fear and safety and how to really find peace. And it's been interesting for me over the years. Some of you who may know me from World Peace Network, been working on peace for 70 years in different organizations. And certainly since I was a teenager, having been brought up in a truly dysfunctional Southern Mediterranean family, I didn't know what it meant, to feel peace. And I started to meditate when I was in my teens. And over the years, I've found ways to ground my being. And I've met many wonderful people who one could feel are grounded in peace. But I've also seen with myself how often I would lose that ground. And I would see how too many times individuals or groups would start off working on peace, being peaceful, but then just imploding or exploding. And so throughout my life, besides just doing my best to meditate as much as I could in order to find that ground, kept wondering, what's missing? One of the questions would be, what's wrong with me? But I learned to let go of that one. And then just ask, what is missing? And very fortunately, about 6 months ago, I bumped into a nervous system coach, health coach. Now you may wonder, what? What are we talking about nervous systems here? And that's Suzanne, by the way, Suzanne Finder. And was kind of reacquainted with polyvagal theory, which was developed by Stephen Porges. And I had known a little bit about it, but obviously I knew nothing really. And through it, began to realize how much my biology and my neurology affects my ability to function either, at peace or in any form, really. And that true peace goes way beyond any external, agreements or our mental state. It's entwined with our physiology and our biology and our sense of safety. And the more we understand this, the more and the clearer it becomes how foundational and important our nervous system is in creating and sustaining peace within. It's actually really seminal. And until we kind of get how we operate, in a sense, we need an operator's, manual for being humans. And no one ever handed one out to us. We just found a lot of dysfunctional ones, I might add. And so this is kind of the polyvagal theory, and what our wonderful guests will be sharing with you will give you the foundation for this so that you know where to begin, and how to then understand how seminal that our nervous system is and how it picks up on things. So that's why these are expert nervous system coaches. And it'd be a great kind of discipline to get out there to let people know exists, because it's really needed. So anyhow, what I'd like to do now is, I realize maybe I should have said my name. Assume everybody knows my name. My name is Yanni Maniad, and I happen to be the chair of the U.S. board of Unity Earth. But what I'd like to do now is to introduce our three guests, and then begin with a question, and then just kind of let it flow. Okay. And so I'd like to first introduce Dr. Les Aria, who is a pain psychologist of over 20 years. He is the co-founder and the chief clinical officer of Mendel Health, a digital therapeutic platform for pain recovery. And he specializes in treating psychophysiological disorders, chronic pain, and medically unexplained conditions. His passion for mind-body interventions promotes a unique style to help patients relate differently to their suffering and thereby shifting them into pain recovery, wellness, and well-being. His current passion is assessing the combined clinical applications of the Safe Sound Protocol, which is something that Dr. Porges created and we'll probably hear more about, and the pain reprocessing therapy to promote pain recovery. And I'll just say, when Suzanne and I have had just discussions about what we're going to be doing today, you know, what she probably knew this, but it came to me as a revelation. Pain is basically a signal from the body or the psyche saying, I'm not safe. It's as simple as that. And all kinds of stuff, and stuff's a four-letter word that we experience in our lives and in our minds, is we don't feel safe. And anyhow, I got that finally. All right, thank you. It took how many decades. Anyhow, I'd like to now introduce, and again, Les will be, we'll move along and you'll get to know them, not from their bio, but from their essence when they start speaking. Next is Stephanie. Stephanie D'Angelo has a master's and is the head of organizational training at the Polyvagal Institute, and a facilitator and co-developer for the Polyvagal Informed Certificate for Organizations program. Boy, I know a lot of groups that could use this. And I'm a group, I'm a microbiome and a bunch of microbiomes that needs help that way too. Anyhow, she's passionate about community building. And in 2018, she founded the Mindfulness Community of New Jersey and continues to provide weekly polyvagal informed and trauma informed programming online through a mobile app. Through her body of work, she has pioneered programs in Fortune 500 corporations and is trained as a trauma support specialist and to teach mindfulness, and accredited by the International Meditation Teachers Association, as well as a Yoga Alliance, continuing education, and is an experienced registered yoga teacher. So yeah, she's covering a whole bunch of bases there, folks. Herself. And as we go along, they'll share with us a bit where you can get more information. We're not here just to be talking heads and give you theory. That's helpful because it can be the first step to lead you to action. But the idea here is, here's some theory and here's a way to apply it, personally, interpersonally, communally, organizationally, etc., however you want to kind of apply it. And last but not least at all, because Suzanne is how I find myself here. And one of these serendipitous things, you listen to a podcast and you go, oh, I'm not interested in what the guy who's talking in the podcast is. I'm interested in the person that's with him. And that's when I heard the word nervous system health coach. And I went, oh my goodness. I have a feeling I need a resonance with that. Okay. So Suzanne Finder is a nervous system health coach, interfaith minister, and spiritual counselor, a graduate of Boston University's Questrom School of Business and All Faith Seminary internationally, and has been in private practice for 15 years. She applies unique and highly effective multidisciplinary approaches to healing that include spirituality, that is the awakening to the awareness of the peace within, to polyvagal theory, which we will hear a lot more about as we get along, so I won't say much back here, and something called cell danger response, based on the research of Robert Naveau. And again, we'll hear more about that, and it's seminal in terms of helping people understand why they can't heal or why they can't find peace. So that's it. I'll now zip my lip and allow the experts to speak, but I will unzip it occasionally. And I'd like to begin by just asking Les, how do you see your nervous system related to creating peace internally, interpersonally, communally, organizationally?
That's a very complex question, and I'll do my best as we dialogue about this. What most people don't know, or at least I did not quite know until I studied the polyvagal theory and really put it into practice, is that our faces is basically the window into our nervous system. Our tone of voice is also another side door into the nervous system. And how the nervous system relates to peace or even love and joy, for that matter, a sense of tranquility, is that when we don't feel safe, when we don't feel a sense of connection or love within, it is often transmitted to another nervous system, sort of like an email, but at an unconscious level. And if I came on this morning speaking really fast and maybe frowning and very terse with my responses, that's the window that everyone would get is, I don't think this fellow is peaceful. And it's not a judgment, it's an awareness. And so the nervous system is really sort of a newspaper you walk around with. And it really is truly a portal into how peaceful someone is. The tone of voice, the pace, the word choices. And it's really a great clue, because when I'm feeling safest, you'll see me smile and laugh, giggle a lot. And when I'm feeling safe, another person next to me will probably pick up the contagion of my smile or my goofiness. And that's how you really know that the nervous system is really communicating something. And it really starts there, as simple as it is. Yet it's more complex than what I just said. But it's the window to peace is what you see. And often I'll just add this, and sometimes we don't see things as they are. Sometimes we see things as we are. And what that basically means is, when we're not peaceful, the world is irritating and unsafe, perhaps. And yet when I'm feeling safe and with my thoughts, my emotions, my physical sensations, and or with someone or a situation, when I'm feeling at peace or not a threat, then what happens is I actually communicate that. And I'm able to feel that, and everything changes. So it's a wonderful transmission that's often unconscious.
Thank you. Stephanie, you can play with that question as well.
Sure. I think that when we think about our nervous system, and it's such a big part of it, the co-regulation, the contagion that Les was talking about, and that can go either way, right? It can go to the contagion of conveying peace or conveying my inner world to someone else, whether it's positive or negative, right?
Right.
One thing that I think is a very, very crucial point about this nervous system, we could call regulation, or peace, we could call that, is the dialogue, the connection between me and me. So the commentary that we hear, I feel like, is one of the most important things. And it was for me in my journey of learning about how my own inner dialogue was creating my dysregulation or activation, or feeling a sense of not feeling peace, not being able to attain it, wanting it. But what was creating that kind of rift in wanting it and having it was this kind of inner dialogue that was not peaceful. And so for me, self-compassion and trying to learn how to accept what that was, and then that's, to me, the foundational part of understanding the way your nervous system is working, because the environment is taking a huge, your nervous system is absolutely genius, getting all the environmental cues. And we look at those and we're like, yes, of course, I don't feel peace because my boss, or because my organization I work in, or the politics of society, or the things that are going on. And really the foundational piece is that me and me, or that relationship to higher power. It would be that. So I think that that's the foundational piece, is that inner dialogue, having self-compassion for that, and then creating a sense of peace that way, acceptance. And then that's the way that I approach everything. How my relationships go depend on this, me and me. How my organizational, even the work, Les and I have done work in organizations. We spend a lot of time helping people connect to their individual nervous system. What's going on here? What's my state? It's first question we'll ask ourselves, what's your state? And in polyvagal theory, there are 3 main states, and that's ventral vagal and sympathetic and dorsal vagal. And those are fancy words for being, I'm okay, I'm mobilized, or I'm immobilized. And we have lots of different ways and languages to make that in each organization. They can figure out their own, but finding out what your state is and knowing what it is, and then knowing how to proceed from there. And that is the journey of peace, that maybe we never quite get to, peace forever. It's peace in the moment. The nervous system is moving up and down through states and hybrid states all the time, throughout the day, depending on what's happening out externally between us and what's happening between me and me. So yes, it was a complex complex question. I don't know if that was clearer than mud or not.
Well, no mud, no lotus, but
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's great.
but it wasn't mud. It was the lotus part of the whole metaphor. And I just want to say, before I have you in there, Suzanne, I'd love to hear more about, again, how one does that, an individual does that. And we'll let Suzanne speak, and both you and Les and she can address that, so that, again, people have a little more rootedness, how they can kind of find their way back home once they've fallen off the cliff. Okay, Suzanne.
So I'm going to use a little story or an analogy. Have you ever been to a party where someone is just the light of the party and everyone wants to gather around them? They have this sense of peace and joy, and they're just fun to be around. And there's something that happens within you when you're near them that lights you up. I think that's so much of a part of what both Les and Stephanie are saying. We want to be with those people who have access to peace, who can be really present. And we want to feel that feeling. So when we think of, I want to be part of a peace movement, it always needs to start with us, because everything we are experiencing, as Les is saying, and Stephanie as well, we're all using just different words. This is a really complex, prismatic sort of a thing. What's happening is we are taking our past experience, which essentially lives in our nervous system, and using that to filter our present experience in the moment. So in my personal practice, and what I do with clients, is keep practicing looking at how the past is getting in the way of the present. Looking at how we can clear out what has held us back in the past, which in my experience and in my practice, which goes a lot, as these guys know, about A Course in Miracles, relates to removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, because love's presence is really what we're wanting and what's already within us. But our past, from experiences, that have been overwhelming. Some people use the word traumatizing. Some people use the word chronically disconnecting, where we don't feel safe. We want to look at those experiences within ourselves and look to see how those experiences may have colored everything up until this moment. But we now have a choice to go, oh, that was appropriate at that time, but that was never the truth of who I am, because I am love, I am peace. So it's an ongoing mindfulness practice and an awareness that we can forgive ourselves so that we can connect with others and they can connect with us. And in that we find peace. We find peace. Let's get back to the party, right? We're finding peace and joy in hanging out with people that are grounded and peaceful and are having fun. We don't feel attacked. We feel this word that I love is agency. We feel a sense of who we are. Yes, this is great. I have control over what I want to say, as opposed to when I feel like I'm under threat, I feel defensive. Lots of things happen physiologically, and I want you guys to, I'm kind of all over the place, but we need to recognize that the physiology of the body is very much directing our behavior and directing our psychology, what we're thinking or what we're feeling in that moment. Everything is interconnected. Les shared with me a phrase, something that Dr. Porges said, and I'm not going to mangle it, Les. I'm going to let you go back to it. But it was something like our physiology expresses through our behavior, expresses through our psychology. Yes, it's bidirectional, but more so, our neurology is driving how we experience the world. So if we want to experience peace within ourselves, and it always starts within, from that, we can then share that peace with others, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's in a room at a party, or whether it's in a community, or whether it's globally. This idea of I'm safe, I have agency, and I'm curious, what's happening with you? What's going on that you're not feeling safe? What do we need to move everyone into safety? Because to me, safety comes first. For us to communicate, for us to find common ground. And I do believe that every single person at their core wants to feel this sense of safety, wants to feel this sense of peace and understanding, wants to know that they can be witnessed without judgment. And that's another aspect of this coming to peace. We cannot find peace if we're judging each other. Now, why would we judge someone else? Here's why. Because we're judging ourselves. This is getting directly back to what Stephanie is saying. So this is a really complex issue, and it starts with, I believe, understanding our neurology so that we can untangle all of this and learn how to work with our neurology, work with our biology, move ourselves into safety so that we can express that to others, and through that find peace in community, in relationship.
I feel like saying amen after that.
Well, I will say that every time I'm with Les and Stephanie and so many of the other folks in the polyvagal community, I'm always learning something new. And it's always so exciting to me.
Yes, I wanted to comment on something you said about safety. I think that's right. A lot of my patients, including myself, I'll throw myself in there. It's sometimes one of the reasons why we're not feeling peace, love, joy. It's because it's not safe to feel safe. And it sounds weird if you actually say it out loud. It's not safe to feel safe. What does that mean? I don't know if anyone grew up in a household where you were not allowed to actually express your true emotions. Right. Now they call it child abuse, but back then, a tree branch came out, or a spanking came out. And if you were causing a ruckus, or one of the famous lines was, "I'll give you something to cry about." And so you quickly suppress that. So therefore, then we enter into relationships and with self, and we realize that we have to put on a persona that satisfies the culture, the needs of other people as opposed to us. And so when I say it's not safe to feel safe, because to be able to work towards the path of peace, it requires you to feel safe with whatever shows up within us.
Mhm.
And most of us, and I wish we do this, and I think the Polyvagal Institute is doing this now, is getting into schools and organization, and Stephanie knows a lot about this, is that we need to start training little ones that it's okay to feel what you got to feel. And there are healthy ways to express it. And so, Suzanne, when you were speaking, I was just triggered by that safe word that actually it is we all want to be, to feel this felt sense of peace. I want that. It's called FOMO, fear of missing out. Like, how do I get that? And a glazed donut to go. And, how do we get that? And so what we do is we try to personify someone, or we try to find happiness and peace. When in actuality, it all begins, like you said, within us. And so I just wanted the audience to know that sometimes, no matter how many books you read and how much meditation you have, and I love meditation, which has brought me up to the point where when I meditate, the anxiety comes up. Is it okay to feel okay? Can I welcome the unwelcomed thoughts and emotions and sensations? And the first human reaction I have is no. How do I get rid of it? And then the dance begins. And so when I realize when we're trying to feel safe, I always think of a dojo, if that makes any sense, where you train martial arts. But in my mind, it's a compassion art. And where you open up the dojo at the front door and the thought comes in and the thought swirls around. The wind in your head swirls around in your body, you get worked up. And then I walk to the back of my mind and open up the other sliding door, and I let thoughts come and go as they are. And I think sometimes when we don't have skill sets or understanding of how we are and how we operate, it becomes a scary thing. And it's a search for the endless pursuit of how do I find peace, when actually peace actually begins within us.
Part of, I think, our culturalization, I know I'm not saying that properly, is we're always comparing. Right? So am I better than? Am I less than? Why do we compare? Because we want to fit in. We want to feel, ultimately, we want to feel belonging. But because of the early training, where we weren't accepted for what was happening with us much of the time, we didn't have someone, Stephanie used the word co-regulate, who could co-regulate with peace and love and say, it's okay. I know for me, I have a lot of early childhood adversities, we'll call them, a lot of loss, and no one to go to feel safe, no one to go to calm my anxiety around, am I okay? Am I okay without a mother? Ultimately, am I okay being taken care of by someone who isn't my parent? A vast disconnection. So my quest as an adult is to connect with something inside of me that has always been safe. But because I didn't have the modeling of the safe adult, the safe parent, I need to find that within me that was always the safe parent. And that's been my practice, and it continues to be my practice, because ultimately I would love to stay in the place where whenever stuff out there comes up, I know that I'm okay, no matter what happens. And that's, gosh, it's a lifelong practice. It's not just, oh, let's get into safety and be happy and, bounce around. It is an ever-changing environment out there. nothing could steal my peace unless there was something within me that came from my past that said, you're not okay. And I think that, Stephanie and I have had this conversation about bringing spirituality and bringing religion into this conversation. And I'm not religious, despite the fact that I'm an interfaith minister. I would say I'm on a spiritual path, but I believe the human known as Jesus. And by the way, I grew up in a Jewish home, so this is a really interesting thing for me to say. I believe that he had mastered his autonomic nervous system so that he could convey peace wherever he went. No matter what was happening outside, he knew who he was. He connected with that inner parent. Some of us might call that God. Some of us might call that Holy Spirit. Some of us might call that higher self, the universe. It doesn't really matter what that is. But there are practices where we can keep coming back to that place and looking at all those things that say, I'm not okay, and then seeing it through the eyes of that loving parent and dispelling that sense of threat. So always coming back, having one foot in safety, no matter what turbulence might be going on around. I think that's, as we cultivate that, that's how we cultivate peace in our communities and bring it out.
I think that I think that when you mention agency, it makes me think of the foundational stability that's necessary. In all of the practices that we'll do when we're training people, we teach this kind of foundational stability. And Suzanne, it really does have to do with that inner parenting. Deb Dana might call it to befriend your nervous system. And it's about being stable physically first. Maybe that's the door that we go through. And I would basically show people how to look at how the walls are holding up the ceiling. Feel how the floor, because for some people with adversity, going right to the body wouldn't be something that would be something they would have access to, or might not if they're not trained in mindfulness. Like Les was talking about, that learning how to let thoughts go and the distractions that are happening. Learning mindfulness over a long period of time, you learn that the distractions are the practice, that the things that are coming in to take away your peace, that is the practice. But that's a little bit further along the road. How can we kind of have this access when we're just here in our physical bodies? We can look at the ceiling. If you're a first responder, you can feel your feet on the ground. You can envision, look at someone across the room and find yourself right here now. Like Suzanne was saying, only healing only can happen in this moment. Only being able to really have agency in the moment, 100% online. I'm completely online when I'm here in the moment. And so many of us don't spend time in the moment because there are so many things that are taking us. The chunking, the way our brain chunks past experiences and says, this is like this. Maybe we don't trust Les because he's too happy, he's too smiley, he's too funny. And I might misread that. My nervous system might misread that. And so that's something that's going on in front of me because of that chunking in my brain that says, well, one time, I met somebody who was so wonderful and gregarious and they betrayed me or something. So we have all these things that are taking our agency away or leaving us with no access to that agency. But finding a physical moment where we can look at the ceiling and the wall and feel the floor, and that's just one way we can physically kind of get our agency back in the moment. Let's get everything up online, and then we can do these kind of things like mindfulness practices and other more they really are more advanced practices because they really require a practice of thought. But press your feet into the floor. Can you feel that there is something on the floor that is stable and holding you? And so these types of things are all leading to what Les and Suzanne are saying about this agency and being present and disentangling the past and coming, that comes into our now, so anyway.
Very helpful. I just wanted to say, for the audience that the key to working with others is asking yourself first, am I present? And that doesn't really mean much to a lot of people sometimes. It's like, huh? What in the world? Well, where am I? I don't know. Of course I'm present. I have no idea what's really going on in there. But I'll just make two comments and then I think Les wanted to say something or whatever. That I found for myself that I didn't know where a place of peace was. I didn't have that experience. And only in deep meditation would I experience it. But then I came into 3D again, and 3D said to me that wasn't real. And so I go back to what I experienced as real. Those kind of, so I could bounce, literally be in a unit of bliss experience, and then the next minute freaking out. So I really appreciate this. Just there's a wall, there's a ceiling, and they're all kind of like performing a function so I don't get squished at the moment at the two stories above me. And like, wow, that's pretty cool. I think maybe I want to put my attention on that. And the thing I wanted to add here and to bring this into organizations is as we work with each other, and I'm speaking to my colleagues, well, you are, but the broader group, it's find that presence first, then bring up the idea, the project, the whatever, tune in on where you are first. And I'd like more help with that, for the group, for the audience. And then by tuning into where you are and trying to be as present as one can be, then also just noticing, I think Suzanne and Les, who, everybody's the same here or whatever, one big voice, how present or not is the person there? Could they possibly even receive you at this moment? And where is the starting point in this moment with where you are and with where they are? So any more help with all that, other than, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify this idea of presence, because that's a really tricky one. So presence in our context is really talking about being judgment-free. But I can be present to, when I'm angry, I can be present to my anger. When I'm anxious, I'm present to my anxiety. When I'm, so this idea of presence is, what are we going to focus on? Are we going to focus on being aware of our own sensations and allowing ourselves to discharge them in a certain way? I mean, it's presence is another one of those really complicated, challenging ideas. So I'd love to hear what some of my colleagues have to say.
Yeah,
I'm getting smiles.
yeah, no, sorry, I was reflecting on what you said, because I think it's a very important thing. How about we not talk, but do something? I think that'd be kind of fun. That. So sometimes words complicate things, or at least I know I complicate things. But I'm wondering whether we can do something kind of fun, kind of piggybacking on what Suzanne and what Stephanie just mentioned. Could everyone, just the audience, do this for the fun of it? And my good friends here on the panel, just follow along here. I love what Stephanie said. Sometimes we're looking for, I have to agree that mindfulness is a practice, and mindfulness, as I like to say, is sometimes when you're on the cushion of the meditation and off the cushion. And when I'm off the cushion of meditation, like Stephanie said, I find the wall or I find my feet. But I found something very practical when I work with a lot of patients with trauma or physical pain. Grab your thumb, and you can, I'm going to have my hands up so you guys can see. You can drop your hands down by your waist side. And this is just for the audience to see, is take a breath in, and as you breathe in, just gently squeeze your thumb and feel your thumb as you breathe in, then pause your breath at the top of it. And as you breathe out, release the attention to the thumb and pay attention to the body. So we're going to pendulate between feeling the squeeze as you breathe in, and as you release your breath, bring your attention back to your body. Let's just do it one more time. Breathing in, squeeze the thumb, pause. And as you breathe out, bring your attention to your body. Good, done. And sometimes it takes something that simple to come to the present moment. And it doesn't matter what thoughts we have or what emotions we're experiencing or sensations showing up. Sometimes we have to get into the driver's seat of the mind or the brain or the body. It's whatever term we want to use. Because if we don't step in, the autonomic nervous system steps in. And that's the beauty of this. And sometimes, as we had mentioned, Deb Dana, who is a phenomenal speaker and an artist of delivering the polyvagal theory, just like Stephanie here, is that I think one of the most important things is we need to learn to, as I call it, reparent our nervous system in the sense that take leadership. Take leadership with the sense of, think of the healthiest parents we would love to have had, but we do have them inside of us. So where I'm now the most compassionate, and by the way, to myself, and I want to share this to the audience, and Suzanne and Yanni and to Stephanie, you guys might laugh at this. Every year I have a group I teach about how to find that sense of peace, love, and joy. And at the end of December, I usually tell them to do this at a sheet of paper, just like a binder sheet of paper. And they write something, they put it in their wallet or their purse or wherever they tend to pull out money. And the sentence goes something like this: in this household, there shall be no self-abuse. And they fold it, and every time they pull out the debit card, they see that sentence. Because in my household and physical household and mind and body and spirit household, there is no self-abuse. And when the moment we catch the self-abuse of, doggone it, Les, what the heck's the matter with you? In that moment, the abuse is starting, the verbal abuse. And so at that point, the most compassionate part of me comes out and says, I know you're trying to help me, and I appreciate it. But honey, right now, that's not helpful. And I do something physical, just like what Stephanie said. As simple as it is I simply find an object in the present moment, a color of something, or the scent of something, or when I'm on a walk. I did not know how many birds are around me until I actually close my eyes and listen with my ears and my heart. I can often hear more than 3 birds chirping that I ignored.
Brandon. You've said it all. Thank you.
It's really beautiful.
Stephanie, when I was looking at you, I was in that breath with you. And this is exactly what you were saying to the audience about co-regulation, is when we don't feel safe to be able to connect with something or someone, including my pet chocolate lab, Bentley. And so I was looking at you and Suzanne and Yanni, and everything was slowing down. And in that moment, it was the most intriguing thing. I just looked as I opened my eyes and connected with you guys. I felt a sense of stillness, if that's a sense of peace. When I looked over at all of you, it was this sense I was smiling on the inside that how wonderful we just paused to not just talk. I loved it. What a great experience. Thank you.
We could feel that too, for sure. All of a sudden we were in it, and I could hear the sound of the fan very loudly all of a sudden in the room that I'm in. And I took my hand to, so part of mine is to take my hand and to give that a little bit of extra care. It's like I'm here. And that back brain doesn't know that someone else isn't saying, you know, it's okay, you're good, it's okay. And you really help just kind of bring us into that. And I really appreciate that. And for people that want to know, well, how do we get that? We want what Les has. How do we get that? Just the way that you did that, you took the sounds in the environment and you're like, oh, those are the birds I never hear. And just keying into one of those sense doors, or all five, can do that for us. And then our own touch, our own care, our own release of oxytocin, the care, the mammalian caregiving reflex responses. And we can flood the brain really with chemicals, that oxytocin that makes us feel loved and peaceful, and a bonding chemical. And that's that me and me. And I'm saying, yeah, I'm here. I'm with you all, which has been an amazing thing about COVID, is that we could do this kind of co-regulation on video. I don't think that I knew it really could be done before, but it can be. And then this reparenting and just being present. And then all of a sudden, I can hear everything that's happening in my environment, and something physiologically changes. And we're in that state together. And it really does feel like peace, like a wash of peace. Really something definitely to investigate if you haven't done that, and to continue to practice for sure. Thanks, Les, for that. That was beautiful.
I know I'm going to ask for more words, and I apologize. But if they can be kind of on this canvas of silence, if we can hear what comes next, remembering the silence and having that as the canvas that we hear it off of. I found it really helpful to understand what this whole mammalian inheritance is, shifting from the reptilian, separation, defensiveness, to the potential mammalian cooperation involved, and perhaps framed in the context of, it is, I think, the biological imperative and the evolutionary imperative of what our potential is. And even, on the background of the silence, of the heart listening rather than the head, kind of a framing of this shift, and again, I'm being obscure because I'd rather let one of you share that shift, as Stephen Porges explained so well, from the reptilian to the mammalian to its full potential. So any of you would like to share that, I'd appreciate hearing that.
I think Stephanie and I, when we've worked together, one of the things we teach people, organizations, is that there's a principle in the polyvagal theory, and I just wanted to framework that for us first. I wanted to talk about neuroception, which goes back to what you're saying. What is the polyvagal theory, really? What is it? And Stephanie did it so beautifully, and she does it very eloquently. And I have a simpler version of it. It's that I've come to understand that when I understand why I think the way I do, why do I feel the way I do, and why do I do what I do without judgment. When I realize the reason I'm terse, the reason I'm impatient, the reason I'm feeling anxious is because your nervous system says me no safe. So the polyvagal is a beautiful framework to understand the neuropsychophysiology of why we do what we do and why we think the way we think. And as to tie in what you said, Suzanne, is that, and I stole this from Stephen Porges, and I've told him this, truth be told, that I've made it so much my own, people think it's me and it's not. It's Dr. Stephen Porges came up with it. So credit goes to him. Shift your physiology, shift your physiological states, and you'll shift your psychological states. And when you shift your psychological states, you will shift your physiological states. And around we go. And so whenever I'm walking my dog, Bentley's my chocolate lab, he is a great dog, great companion, smells like a puppy. He's 3 years old. And as I'm strolling down, taking our morning walks, we walk about 3 times a day, and it doesn't fail for me to get upset easily from the state of peace, even after a meditation and walking Bentley, feeling the air, I'm feeling this peace, this presence, and all of a sudden he loves squirrels. So what happens is he yanks my hand. So what's this got to do with peace and the polyvagal? What's really interesting is I want peace. And sometimes I get upset because I don't have peace. And when Bentley pulls me and he chases the next squirrel up the tree and he's trying to get up there. And then I hear my tone of voice, Bentley, in this terse voice. And the moment I hear myself, in that moment, I know I'm no longer in a state of safety. And I know exactly I'm now mobilized, which is what we call that when we are feeling fight or flight, stress, my words come through that nervous system of being fight or flight, stress response. And so when I recognize I'm in that physiological state of defense, to shift my psychology, to come back to that sense, I want that peace, is I intentionally slow my breath down. I intentionally tap him on the body. I sometimes do what Stephanie does. I simply do this, like a little kid who just got worked up, a 5-year-old. And in that moment, I'm shifting myself up physiologically from a state of mobilization, fight or flight, into a state as, it's okay, it's all right. That's his biological imperative, to chase squirrels. And so in that moment, the polyvagal theory really just helps me understand that I'm human and I shift in physiological states. As much as I want to be peaceful, I'm no longer feeling like an imposter where I have to be peaceful and I have to be just this person that everyone tells me, oh, you're a psychologist, you get upset. And so it's the funniest comment I get. So in that sense, the polyvagal theory really helps us understand to be able to get to a state of peace, you actually have to understand and be, as Deb Dana would say, and Stephanie said this too, is you have to be the operator. You have to understand how this operates within you. Not to judge, but to be grateful to the fact that we have a wonderful system within us that helps us navigate our day-to-day moments. And if you kind of know why you feel the way you feel or think the way you think, it's because the nervous system is constantly scanning, and that's neuroception. Neuroception is one of the principles that says the brain, the nervous system is constantly scanning inside of you, outside of you, and whomever's in between you, those 3 domains. And it's constantly asking one thing, and it's a beautiful thing. Am I safe or not? Am I safe or not? It's constantly asking that question. And when we react to something difficult, it shifts our physiology, which is the hierarchy of the nervous system. Safe, I call it stress, or scared, shut down. Stress, safe, stress, or shut down. And in that hierarchy, if we know where we are, I then understand that this is why I'm not feeling peace. It's because I'm reacting to something around me, even though I don't want to react. I don't have choice. And in that sense, it goes back to what Stephanie said. Besides neuroception and the hierarchy of the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, the co-regulation. And so the polyvagal theory basically explains this in different principles. It says, it's okay to be who you are. Do you know where you are in your nervous system? Stephanie, I'm not sure you can add to that because, the co-regulation part, and we talked about the self-regulation part of those principles. It's complex, but I think it's real important that for us to be able to go, it's okay not to know, it's okay not to feel peace, but do you know why you're not feeling peace?
Yeah, and on the co-regulation part, I think a very important piece to understand about that is this mammalian caregiving piece of it. It's the cranial nerves that are, as Les was saying, are the window to our peace, to our soul, to our nervous system. Really, our facial expressions and our tiny little lines around the eyes. And when we hold a baby, they are basically learning from us how to regulate themselves. Mom is saying in a beautiful voice, "Oh, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay." And we're teaching these young mammals, our babies, how to regulate themselves. They learn that through co-regulation. And this is why co-regulation is such a huge part of the human experience, because we are learning that as infants. And when there's interruptions in co-regulation, we see attachment problems. And I'm not a therapist, but lots of issues can happen through that. So that's why when Suzanne was talking about parenting yourself, when we can say it's okay, or we can have that internal dialogue that's okay, the same one we might get as we were soothed or not soothed as children, but we should learn. And even Les said it too, like to soothe ourselves. Am I like a 5-year-old? Like I'm going to give myself those cues of regulation. And so co-regulation becomes so important and a huge part of polyvagal theory, that we are really wired for connection. And as mammals, this is the most the evolution part of our nervous system is now we're wired for this ventral vagal co-regulation. Is the way our nervous system is, which is why we seek out people when we have a problem. We want to talk to somebody. We want to be in community. If you look at the blue zones, the people who live the longest in the world, they have social groups. And they have, these are people living to be over 100 years old. They are in their families. They're not in separate homes. They are with other people who are living together in a community. This is why community building is so important, and why it's a passion of mine, because co-regulation is the way that we can bring ourselves back into that ventral vagal state. If you have ever had a time in your life where maybe you felt very down, or you felt very introspective. So here's the thing, you might not be down, but you might be a very introspective person. Maybe you're not very outgoing, but at times feel like you want to make connections and it might be challenging for you. So polyvagal theory would say defensive states like dorsal vagal collapse, that would be like the kind of the opposite of where I feel like I could call Les and say, "Hey, let's have a chat." If I feel very introspective and I feel like I can't call somebody, I might need to get myself, do something regulating for myself, be kind, say some kind words, take a shower, take a walk, listen to birds, and then I might be able to make that call or email Suzanne and say, "Hey, it's time for a chat." So this co-regulation is a very important mammalian feature. And if you don't feel like you're very much into co-regulation, let's not ever look at it as like normal or not normal. We'll say, I have some very introverted children who are the opposite of me. And they have their own regulated way of being, recharging on their own. But then when they get to a point, then they can make those connections as they would. So not to make any broad statements of how you should be. I think that connection with yourself is probably the most important, but the in-between, that co-regulation and with the greater world, it's just a huge part of those features of being human.
I would describe that our learning to co-regulate, or the learning from co-regulation with a safe person, teaches us how to co-regulate with our higher self.
Yeah.
And we can go to that self when other people aren't around. And we can go to that self so we don't to have that feedback loop of judgment, which continues to mess with the physiology of our cells. And we can go to that higher self for soothing when we're on our own, when we're by ourselves for that moment. I've been studying a lot about human evolution of late, and 95% of our evolution as humans on the planet, we were living in small villages, 35, 40 people, where everyone was equal. They had different roles, but everyone was a tight part of that community where they knew they had each other no matter what was going on. And we in our culture, we don't have that. So the community building, the peace building, the learning how to feel safe in oneself in order to have that yummy connection that the four of us just had. So much a part of bringing peace into the world is starting really small and then moving it outward.
I came across a quote that I keep feeling I want to send to Suzanne. I keep forgetting, but it's by a Greenland indigenous elder, and she wrote, "Individualism is the cage of humanity. Individualism is the cave of humanity." And what we're, in terms of our evolution, we need to unbecome individuals. And that gets pretty radical, and you've got to put it in context because, we all, we're both and, so to speak, we're not, whatever. And the thing I want to kind of just throw in for the audience that I know, because this was significant to me, and just to state it in these terms I'm about to state it, is that the reptilian brain did not know how to co-regulate, how to go into okayness, and also did not know how to come together with another. It didn't have that ability, or very minimally. And then in the process of evolution, through a variety of jaw things and ear things and all kinds of stuff that went on from a physiological point of view, the mammal appeared that then began to learn from sound, what they heard, prosody, and what they, an affect of a person, that they can trust, the baboon on the other side of the road, whatever, other side of the forest, and they might mate, or they might come together in community and then create further safety for themselves. And so that's within us really highly evolved frontal cortex types. I'm being a little, whatever. But this is the gift of the conscious evolution that we can move toward. When we recognize this dynamic and how important the things that the three of you have been teaching us to tap into, and then to come from, and then to learn to be with, and then to become more. So that 1 + 1 no longer equals 2, it equals a new one. And that's evolution. So anyhow, for my friendly folks in the world peace movement, in the peace movement, and so they're going to say, yeah, right, Maniatis, yeah, you got it. Anyhow, but this foundation, I think, is so important. But thank you for framing all you have, and play off of that, or whatever you want to say now. Whoever may want to add some here. How can we deepen this even more?
We could talk about one of the processes that brought all four of us together. We could talk about the safe and sound protocol that Dr. Stephen Porges developed as a result of his 40 years of research in the autonomic nervous system. And I absolutely love the safe and sound protocol. It made a huge difference in my personal life, from a health standpoint, as well as from an emotional standpoint. I look at the safe and sound protocol, which is an auditory protocol. What does that mean? It means we're listening to music that has been embedded with frequencies that replicate this prosody, this beautiful vocalization of a mother's lullaby. We don't recognize it necessarily because it's embedded in music. It might be classical music, it might be 60s, 70s, and 80s, Disney music, whatever. But it does a couple of things. It stimulates the vagus nerve to move into ventral, to move into safety. But what I find super cool about it is it changes a unique aspect of our physiology. This tiny little middle ear muscle, it's the smallest muscle in the body, in the human body, called the stapedius. And when we've had chronic stress or trauma, unresolved trauma, the body will make adjustments to try to keep us safe, to keep us on the alert for potential danger. And so what the role of the stapedius is a filter. So when it's turned on, it looks sort of like a seed. It's kind of have a seed shape. I don't know if you see my hands. It's kind of a little bit rounded, and it hangs out in the middle ear. And when we've had trauma, when we've had that chronic disconnection, it will flatten. And the flattening will render it so that the nervous system is hearing frequencies that are threatening to the human and to the mammal. And it keeps us more on edge, keeps us more attuned to the possibility of threat. And what the safe and sound protocol does is it reshapes that muscle. And that puts the filter back to the on switch, if you will, making it active to give us some breath, some space to be able to be with what's going on, where we're not constantly bombarded by the sense of something's wrong. I don't know what it is. And I see that as the beginning for in my practice anyway, as a really helpful beginning of the journey to help settle the nervous system so that we can do the deeper work, so that we can do these practices and have awareness. Oh my gosh, I'm following a squirrel up a tree, right? We can finally go, oh wow, I'm following, without it, our nervous system just goes whoosh and takes us off on the squirrel trip. So I have found that remarkably helpful. I know, Yanni, you've been through that process. I know both of you have as well, Les and Stephanie. And Les, I think you've provided over 1,000 patients with the SSP. Is that still accurate? You're probably over that by now. That was last year.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. I think the Safe and Sound Protocol, as its trademark name is, it's basically a great intervention. It's a great conduit to the portal of compassion and peace. Sometimes we all need a little helping hand. I think sometimes we have good intentions of wanting to be peaceful and seeking peace and just all those synonyms. And it's no matter how hard we try, sometimes our circumstances within us, around us, whomever's in between us, as I mentioned, is just not permitting it. And one of the things goes back to what Stephanie said in the beginning about, learn to self-regulate and not just, co-regulate and self-regulate. The Safe and Sound Protocol is a great instrument to shift your physiological states. And here we go again. The sentence from Porges that I've made my own. is when we shift the physiological states through the safe and sound protocol, the SSP, it shifts your psychological states. And that's when we can sense that we have a breathing room. We have that sense of it's not so bad. It's really amazing that what your mind says, and if I could use that term, it's loosely defined, is that there's a part of us that shows up. And when we can actually downregulate our nervous system, the physiological states of defense, fight or flight, or even just feeling kind of shut down for that matter, when we can actually just regulate our autonomic nervous system, that psychology in us shows up. And it really is a conduit to, as Porges would say, it is nearly impossible to have compassion until you shift your physiology. And we could have a smile on our face, and we could have, the kindest words. However, we're screaming on the inside. And he says, you really find we can kind of fake the compassion, but true compassion comes when we are feeling at peace with whatever is inside of us or around us. And when we can shift our physiology, and the Safe and Sound protocol does that, it sort of retunes the autonomic nervous system that's stuck in a state of defenses into states of safety, as you said. And that's when I have this visual when Porges was talking about when you finally shift your physiology, whether with the Safe and Sound protocol or with practices, as Yanni and Stephanie had mentioned about, when we can actually shift our physiology, that portal, it's almost like if you guys have watched Star Trek, a beam of light opens and shows up, and you can actually walk through the walls. And that's what we all want to walk through, those walls of peace and to get across the other side. But peace is actually right here. It's not somewhere else. And I think the Safe and Sound protocol gives us the conduit to shift our physiology so we can start to feel this thing called peace. So yeah, absolutely in agreement with you on that.
Thank you. Stephanie, do you have anything you'd like to comment about?
Yes. So I'm not an SSP provider. I'm actually just really learning more about the SSP, and I do think it's an excellent door to bring a change in the defensive strategies of the body, and we'll call that like sympathetic or dorsal vagal. And we use these language, we throw this around as though everyone knows what it is, but let's say we mean overwhelm, either that fight or flight, like Les was saying, or that sense of overwhelm. And if you're have an opportunity to try the SSP, I know that I am going to try it, but there are also other things that you can do, which are like gargling or using ice. You can put ice on your face or do a cold shower or put ice on your cold water on your wrists, things like that help to regulate the vagus nerve, because it really innervates from the back of the brain stem through the larynx and pharynx. So that's why the voice becomes so important. And I created a program, Polyvagal Informed Embodied Mindfulness, that doesn't just use mindfulness, it uses the body and where the vagus nerve innervates to try to activate and use movement and the diaphragm. One of the best ways you can do it is, like Les was talking about, is to take a breath. Actually, the best kind of intervention is to work with your breath, with the vagus nerve. And we're talking about the autonomic nervous system. And you know how everyone says, oh, take a deep breath. Well, it really is. And humans are the only ones that can intervene on that autonomic nervous system. We can make changes by controlling the breath. There's lots of voluntary controlled breath studies about this that help to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, to bring calm into a system that's stressed. So we can use breath, we can use movement, we can use singing, chanting, humming, ice. There's so many things that we can use that can help our autonomic nervous system. And the SSP is another. And there will be more, I'm sure, coming out. There are other types of vagal nerve stimulators for medical problems like dysautonomia and problems with the heart. So it's a fascinating field, and it's young and it's growing, and there's going to be so much more information coming out, and you can definitely find out more about that at polyvagal.org if you're interested.
Thank you, Stephanie. We have about 5 or 7 minutes to go. And I want to mention this and then let each one of you, if you have some final comments. If you're interested in exploring this further with any of the three of our guests here, just go to the page where the panel is described, and you'll find their bios and some links on how to kind of access their work or them. And I would encourage that. And I just a comment, and then I'd let each of you kind of make the 2 minutes comments, whatever you might have. I've been around long enough to know nothing is it, or everything is it, whatever. And there's always the new wow, that's it, man, type of thing. And but also, having been around long enough, there has been some ability to kind of experience a lot of dots, a lot of pixels in my life, and actually see some of them come into focus, or enough of them to kind of create some clarity. And this whole polyvagal thing, I don't know what thing may not be the best way to describe it. I can just say for myself, and it's all obviously can only speak for myself, has really helped see the broader picture and the micro and the macro in the context I've never really had that big a view. From my cells to the energy that makes them up, to whatever that is everything, or is whatever. So you may want to play with this. And I think that it could be done very valuable, for you individually, and as well in going forward with your work. So anyhow, I'll zip my lip, as I said before, and allow the three of you to, to offer some comments as we come to a conclusion. And should I call somebody? You want? Suzanne, did I get you on the spot there?
I have a garbage truck that's just passing by. So I'm going to pass the torch to someone and come back to me.
How about I'm going to use that line next time, Suzanne.
That's a squirrel.
Beautiful. I do have a couple of closing statements, and I just want to, and one, thank you so much. It's it's really wonderful every time I come into a different panel, but I really enjoyed being with everyone today. Hopefully the audience actually enjoyed our talk here, our discussions here, and hopefully got something out of it. I just want to close with this, is that just to send a message of peace to everyone, that you're not responsible for what shows up. You're not responsible for what shows up, but you are responsible to how you show up to what showed up. If that 5-year-old is screaming inside of you, it is your responsibility to show up and soothe that child within. And sometimes we don't know what that is. And so one of the most important things that I do, and I like to kind of practice what I preach, is that every morning and throughout the day is I find ways to create safety within me. And sometimes it's just not talking. And sometimes it's just being grateful to the beverage I'm drinking. And sometimes, as my new favorite thing is, how many birds can I actually hear on my walk? And you'll be amazed how many birds you hear. And I've come to realize that my currency is safety, which is the portal to peace for me.
That's really lovely. I think that in closing, I wanted to just mention that polyvagal theory is a framework, and it shows us predictable patterns. It doesn't define us. It doesn't mean we're this or that. It's not labeling us, but it's showing us the way the predictable patterns go. And so, like the Buddha said, don't listen to me, check it out for yourself. And to be able to observe and see where you're at, to know if it's the 5-year-old or it's the, or the 35-year-old or the 58-year-old, whoever it is that's having these experiences, and what's the commentary. That's the biggest part for me, is the commentary, and developing self-compassion, using what we were designed for, these mammalian care, this okayness that we're wired for, that we might not feel we have access to. Find a way to get there. It's okay. It's okay. Might be a cold shower. That might not feel like like it's going to bring you there, but it might bring you out of where you are. And so just to explore, to do the inquiry, to befriend yourself on the journey. And I think that for me has been self-compassion, to the commentary, has been the absolute key to peace for me. And so really harmony is a value for me in my life, and everyone in my world knows it. And my question to myself is this bringing me towards harmony or away from harmony? And that is how I stay in this place that kind of feels like this, of peace.
Thank you.
I want to reiterate everything everyone has said and share something that I read recently with I have a weekly Course in Miracles group. What is valuable and what is valueless? If we can remember what we truly value is peace, so that we can be in touch with, I'm not at peace right now. How can I be with myself and bring myself back to my breath? How can I remember I'm not my thoughts? How can I feel my feet on the ground in this moment? What is valuable to me? Number one, if we make peace our number one value, it will bring us joy beyond comprehension. We will be able to connect with one another. We'll be able to soothe those who are not in a position where they can connect with their peace. And we can, each one of us, bring more safety into the world, bring more peace into the world, if we can come back to, what do I really value? Do I value my being right in my judgment? Or do I value my peace and connecting and just love for myself despite my past? I think that's going to for each one of us, for each leader, and we're all leaders, we're all teachers in the peace movement. Are we conveying peace, which is love for ourselves and love for each other? Or are we conveying our judgment, our call for peace? We're either calling for peace, right? Because I'm not in peace right now. I need help. Or can I express that peace, express that love? Thank you, everyone, for sharing this time with us. I'm really honored to be speaking to everyone and to have my colleagues on this panel. Thank you. Thank you, Yanni.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Les. I always ask myself, how did this go? And the only thought I was having is, I got to listen to this again. There's some really good stuff there. So that answers my question. And that's my, 5-year-old telling me that. That's, he can be fun sometimes.
That's a wise 5-year-old.
I was gonna say.
Anyway, thank you so much. Feel very blessed by this, and I'm sure it'll help many people. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You.